Hi, Joshua Swiger here. Some of you might recognize the outfit I've got on right now. Look, I know that I put that picture up everywhere, but uh, you know what? It's a good picture, and I'm going to keep using it. So, I wanted to tell you about one of the things that's most important to me. On this channel, we're going to talk about a few different issues that I'm really interested in. And one of those is just getting out into nature. We're very fortunate to live here in Hawaii where there's just beaches and mountains and trails, just all kinds of stuff. And one of my favorite things to do is just to take people out into the rainforest, do a hike, or just walk along the shore, tide pools, and you know, there's so much, so close to a city of almost a million people. We've got some of the most beautiful stuff in the world, and I like to tell a story about um, my philosophy on this sort of stuff. See, I used to live in Monterey, California, and I was very fortunate to get a job at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. My job was just basically to stand at the door and take tickets for people who were coming in. But I got to do a little bit of other stuff when I was there too. From time to time, I'd get to actually walk people around and narrate the exhibits. That was one of the most wonderful jobs I've ever had in my entire life. Um, so one day I was working at the movie theater. They have a little theater inside and they show some short documentaries, and they hand out tickets to people, just free tickets, just to make sure that everybody gets a seat. So I was standing at the door and a woman walked up to me and just said, "Where can I find the kelp forest exhibit?" And so I just pointed, I said, "Just right there, see that area right there, just walk down that way and you'll see the kelp forest right there." I said, "Oh, okay, thank you." Um, so I went back to taking the tickets. I got everybody in the theater, and then I said um, to the other employee who was working there with me, "You know what? I'm going to go down and make sure that that lady found it, just since we have a couple minutes here." Now, let me tell you something about the kelp forest exhibit. It's incredibly unique. I don't think there's anything like it anywhere else in the world, to be honest. Actually, at the time when I worked there, it was the only place in the entire world where they had uh, giant kelp like that on exhibit. It's extremely difficult to grow kelp in a confined environment. It's actually not a plant. It does photosynthesis, looks like a plant, acts like a plant, but it's it's a completely different kind of organism. So it's very, very difficult to grow it in some sort of aquarium tank or something. So you have to simulate the motion of the waves and all kinds of stuff like that. They're able to do that. They have an exhibit that is 28 feet tall, enormous. And I know some of you use the metric system, so for your benefit, that is 0.0085344 kilometers. So I'm sure that's more convenient for you. Four big, huge glass panels with four smaller ones above that. And I'm going to link to a video from the Monterey Bay Aquarium so you can actually see it for yourself. And I highly encourage you, if you're ever in Northern California, take a trip. Drive, it's only about an hour and a half drive from San Francisco. Can drive up from Santa Barbara or something like that. A couple hours drive. Go to Monterey Bay Aquarium. It's absolutely worth it. 100% sure. So, inside this exhibit, there are thousands of fish, dozens of different species. Some of them are specifically captured and placed in there. But one of the really interesting things about Monterey Bay Aquarium is they pull in enormous amounts of seawater. They have a pipe that goes way out into Monterey Bay, and they suck in all this seawater. And along with the seawater comes plankton, and part of the plankton is things like fish eggs or little larvae of starfish or kelp or all kinds of different things. So sometimes stuff will show up in there, and I got to know some of the husbandry staff, and they would say, "We didn't put that in there. It just grew on its own." And stuff's coming in from the bay and going out, so all kinds of amazing different organisms. At times you go there and there's schools of literally like 5,000 sardines. It's stunning. It's unbelievable to just watch them swim through there. When I worked at the aquarium, which unfortunately wasn't for a very long time, like I said, I was a temp. I only was going to be living there for a few more months. and so I stayed as long as I could. When I worked there, every morning I used to show up about an hour early for work, and I would walk through as much as I could of the aquarium. And every morning I would walk by the kelp forest, and I'm not embarrassed to say it now, but I couldn't help but come to tears. It's a little awkward when you're standing there just crying in the open in the middle of your workplace. But every day is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my entire life. And by the way, there's a huge amount of other exhibits too, but this one in particular really struck me. So I ended up, as I said, walking over to where this woman was, and I found her there. She was standing right beside the exhibit, and she was standing by where there's a huge concrete wall to support the side of these hundreds of thousands of gallons of water, and she's looking through a window. It's about this big. It's a circle, and she is just completely enthralled, just looking all around, just oh wow. And it was beautiful. I was just standing there next to her, just with her. And I started thinking, I wonder why she's looking through the little window on the side when she could just go over there. And then it occurred to me, she doesn't know that this isn't the main exhibit. She doesn't realize that there's a much bigger viewpoint on the side. So I said to her, can you step over here with me for a moment? She said, oh, okay. We walked around the corner, and then this enormous view of the kelp forest opens up. And honestly, I hope I never forget the look on her face for the rest of my life. And she instantly burst into tears. And, you know, it's just an overwhelming emotion to see something so beautiful, especially when you didn't even know it was there. And of course, I got all choked up too. You know, I always remember that. And I feel like there's a metaphorical truth to that. I feel like everybody knows a little bit about nature, especially in the modern world. We watch lots of documentaries are super popular nowadays, and I love that. You can turn on Netflix and watch all kinds of stuff, tons of stuff on YouTube. But we're all looking at it through this little window, and we're seeing an amazingly beautiful view. But I don't know if everybody realizes how much better an experience you can get. And the whole point that I'm trying to say here is you have to get out into it. Honestly, if you just have a garden in your backyard, just to understand the variety of life that lives there. Of course, some of it's not all that welcome, but at least you get to learn about it. And then some people live in a place where they've got, you know, a wooded area behind their house, and they never ever go through it. They never even take a look at it. I'm not judging. I just think that a lot of people it doesn't occur to them. You know, often I've been on the internet talking about how I like to go hiking and we like to go snorkeling here in Hawaii, and people say, oh, you're so fortunate to live in a place where you can do that. You can go hiking lots and lots and lots of places. I was in New York City, and when we drove over the George Washington Bridge, I mean, you're just about in the middle of nowhere after not even an hour's drive. A lot of New Jersey when you get away from the coast, there's nothing. And then you get into Pennsylvania, it's just mountains and mountains and mountains. And, you know, not everybody has the means to do that, but, I mean, do what you can. Get on a bus. Go. Here in Hawaii, we can get literally from downtown into the tropical rainforest in 5 minutes. That's one of my favorite things to do when I do tours for people. I tell them to look at the clock. We get up in the mountains. 5 minutes later, rainforest. Beautiful. But one of the most beautiful places I have ever visited in nature was actually in the middle of a little rundown old steel town in the Rust Belt. Had once been a vibrant city with tons of steel mills, and had just declined and declined and declined, and is barely hanging on at this point. And somebody just said, let's just go walk through this area, and then next thing you know, we're in the forest. And I mean, it was like a fairy tale. I was very economically depressed, but some of the friendliest people I've ever known in my entire life. Really good food too. I don't think almost any of them know. Because I walked through I brought some other friends from that area, and they didn't know anything about it. Or some people kind of knew something was there, but had never been there. And so when people say to me like, well, yeah, you can do that because you live in Hawaii. You know what? Come out here. Have that experience with me. It would be wonderful. If you're out in Hawaii, look me up. We'll go take a tour. But it's everywhere, I mean, there's so much nature. When I lived in Florida, there's no mountains anywhere, but I had an amazing experience right off of the freeway, like right next to the freeway in Tampa Bay. There's a little area that we swam in. There was a mangrove forest, and we were snorkeling in this much water, and right in front of our faces is a whole huge variety of little fish. So it's everywhere. If people just knew the absolute zoo of life that's in the dirt in your backyard. If all you have is grass, I mean, you could just learn about just what the microorganisms that live there. Whatever you can do, go do it. And I promise you, you'll be better for it. All right, well, thanks for watching if you made it this far. And I feel weird saying it, but you know how it goes. Like the video, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Bye-bye.